I'd be keen to see a pilot exploring the applicability of universal basic income in London. I previously commissioned analysis to better understand the costs and benefits of the policy that showed a potential positive impact on poverty levels, but at a substantial financial cost. I'm aware of a number of UBI studies and pilots already underway across the UK and Europe, and my officers and I will consider their findings. I've shared the findings of the research I commissioned with ministers for their consideration. I noted with interest the recent proposals for a micro-pilot in East Finchley. GLA officers are meeting with the representatives from Autonomy and Grange Big Local, the organisations behind the proposal, to understand more about their work. However, it remains the case that running a pilot in London of the scale necessary to generate meaningful insight would require significant investment, which would mean support from government. At the moment, that support isn't there, so someone else would need to fund a pilot. The GLA is not in a position to do so. I do agree with the general principle of universality. That's demonstrated by my decision to make funding available to extend free school meals to all primary school children next year, which will allow more than 250,000 more children to receive the benefits of free school meals. Between that work and my emergency-free holiday and weekend meals programmes, which will provide the equivalent of 10 million meals to London families, I hope it's clear that I'm working to ensure we reach and support as many people as possible. In the face of government opposition, we continue to fund free travel on all TfL services for under 11s, free bus and tram travels for under 18s, and free travel for over 60s. We've also done a huge amount of work helping Londoners to access support. We've made £2.3 million available to London Citizens Advice and the Legal Support Trust networks this year to boost their capacity to help Londoners understand their rights and entitlements during these challenging times. This has already delivered significant income gains for Londoners. All this work has something in common. We're stepping up to support Londoners where the government should be providing the basics.
Thank you for your answer. I'd like to start, first of all, by commending you, actually, for co-signing a letter with myself, Labour mayors around the country and the Green Party leadership, calling on the Prime Minister to support universal basic income trials across the country. In fact, I was in Newcastle last week at Northumbria University, where Professor Matt Johnson, with a brilliant team, have done lots of research around universal basic income and the public health benefits, and indeed they've done that research with Campus and Autonomy. I'm just curious, what do you see as the potential benefit of universal basic income for Londoners?
I've also seen the research he talked about and the health benefits. I think all the studies, including around the world, confirm the health benefits. For me, the important thing is to see if this leads to people not falling through the cracks, falling through the nets. We do know, for example, many people in London who are working are in poverty. We also know people who are not working, receiving benefits, are still in poverty. And some of the evidence is mixed in relation to does it disincentivize people. In my view, the evidence is mixed there. I don't subscribe to school of thought where people are disincentivized to work by receiving a UBI. What motivates me is the evidence. Do the pilot, look at the evidence, and if it works positively, scale it up.
I'm not convinced any of the research shows that it does disincentivize people. That's sometimes quoted from Finland, but that wasn't even the criteria they were looking at, and I think at best it just looked like it was neutral. But moving on to more positive news, I'm delighted to hear you mention Grange Big Local in East Finchley. I think this is a really exciting moment where a group of Londoners are coming together to make this happen on their own, but this doesn't exist in a vacuum. I think there's millions of ordinary Londoners who are just sick of the situation that's happening and looking for different answers. Now, the findings of this pilot will be so valuable in driving forward this whole conversation around UBI and potentially starting London on a path to becoming a fairer city with less poverty. In fact, I think the research you commissioned showed it could lift 160,000 Londoners out of poverty. So will you take this opportunity to publicly lend support to Grange Big Local?
For the sake of completeness, in the Finland story, the government chose in Finland not to continue with the pilot or to scale it up, which in itself speaks volumes. Other pilots have been done which have been finished and not been scaled up. So that's why it's really important to look at the evidence. My team's meeting Grange Big Local, I think today.
Yeah.
So once the officers have met with Grange Big Local, subject to what's been said, if there's a good case for support, of course I'll support the pilot that they're looking into in East Finchley. There are questions about funding and stuff which can be worked out in the conversations we have with them later on today.
And I'm really excited you're meeting them this afternoon, and your team are. You'd at least applaud, I guess, Londoners coming together to look for schemes. Listen,
it's fantastic. And the great thing about this scheme is that there'll be two schemes, one in London and one in Jarrow, which is the symbolism is obviously very important in relation to poverty and so forth. But of course, it's a really good thing. And I've always said one of the things we've got to try and encourage people to do is not see themselves as consumers, but as citizens. And this is a really good example of citizenship.
It's really good to hear you applauding that. What conversations have you had with your team about potentially funding a trial like this? I know you still need to meet them before you can maybe reveal too much about that.
We've had a number of conversations. As I said in my answer in the substantive question, it's simply not possible for us to fund this scheme. We need government support. There are two big reasons why we're going to be a bit nervous about funding a scheme, aside from the fact we can't afford it. One is it becomes a taxable income, which means it could just end up going back to the Treasury. Secondly, it could mean that people who receive the UBI are no longer eligible for some benefits, the way universal credit works and housing benefit works. And that's why this is a meeting with Grange Big Local. The pilot in Wales had the support of national government, bigger scale, bigger funding. And so, the obvious advice is to wait and see the results of the Welsh pilot rather than spending more taxpayers' money in a pilot in London, which is just too small for the results to be meaningful in terms of scale. The numbers involved.
There is something called the Better Off mechanism, which they're using in Wales to make sure that anyone on a basic income is not worse off. And I think the way you do that is by making sure the amount is enough, even if you are on benefits or you're sanctioned. But I'm out of time, but this conversation will continue, I'm sure. Thank you, Chair.